In 2006, Showtime introduced America to a forensic analyst who worked for the Miami Metro Police Department by day and made people disappear by night. He had a code, he had a boat, he had a freezer full of glass slides from every person he'd ever taken out. And somehow, over 8 seasons, this show made you root for him. The show was called Dexter. It ran for 96 episodes across 8 seasons from 2006 to 2013. It won Golden Globes. It broke Showtime's viewership records. It turned Michael C. Hall into a household name and John Lithgow into one of the greatest television villains ever committed to screen. And it asked one question that no other show on television had the nerve to ask. What happens when the monster is the hero? This isn't a highlight reel. This is the whole story. Every betrayal, every kill, every moment where Dexter Morgan came within inches of getting caught. So let's go through every single season, because this show built one of the most compelling characters in television history, and then spent 8 years testing exactly how far he could bend before he broke. Miami. Sun, palm trees, nightclubs, and a body count that would make most cities blush. And working inside the machine designed to solve those bodies is Dexter Morgan, blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department. He's smart, polite, brings donuts to work every morning, and has a girlfriend named Rita who thinks he's the most decent man she's ever met. He also kills people, has been killing people for years, and he keeps a box of blood slides hidden inside his air conditioning unit. One drop from every victim, like a serial killer's scrapbook. But Dexter doesn't kill randomly. He follows a set of rules called the Code of Harry, taught to him by his adoptive father, a Miami cop named Harry Morgan. The code is simple. Only kill people who deserve it. Only kill people who have killed others and escaped justice. Never get caught. And above all, never kill an innocent person. Harry figured out early that his adopted son was wired differently. When Dexter was a kid, Harry found a grave in the backyard. Not just the neighbor's dog, other things were in there too. Instead of sending him to a psychiatrist or turning him in, Harry made a choice that would define the rest of the series. He decided to train Dexter, teach him to channel whatever was inside him toward people the justice system couldn't touch. Predators, abusers, people who walked on technicalities. Harry turned his son into a weapon pointed at the people the law couldn't reach. And it worked. For years, it worked. Harry gave Dexter a moral compass made of murder. He taught him how to pick targets, how to verify their guilt, how to create a kill room, how to dispose of remains. He turned bedtime stories into lessons on blood evidence and forensic countermeasures. Most fathers teach their sons to ride a bike. Harry Morgan taught his son to get away with homicide. When the show opens, Dexter has perfected his routine. He stalks his targets, confirms their guilt through research, wraps them in plastic on a table, makes them confess, collects a blood slide, and kills them with surgical precision. Then he takes his boat, the Slice of Life, dumps the body parts in the ocean near Bay Harbor, and goes back to work the next morning with donuts and a smile. His coworkers think he's a little odd. His girlfriend thinks he's gentle. His sister Debra thinks he's the best brother in the world. And Sergeant James Doakes, the only cop in the building with functioning instincts, looks at Dexter and says, "I'm watching you." And he means every word. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta runs the homicide division with equal parts ambition and political instinct. She plays favorites, buries mistakes, and flirts with Dexter in a way that makes Debra physically cringe. Angel Batista is the department's moral compass, a genuinely good detective who believes the best in people, even when the evidence says otherwise. And Vince Masuka, the forensics tech, fills every silence with inappropriate jokes and somehow manages to be both the funniest and the loneliest person in the building. Doakes can't prove anything, but he can feel it. Every time Dexter walks into a room, Doakes gets the creeps. And in a building full of detectives who are supposedly trained to read people, Doakes is the only one who senses that something is fundamentally wrong with the guy who brings the donuts. He follows Dexter to the marina, confronts him in parking lots, waits outside crime scenes just to study Dexter's face when he examines blood. Doakes is obsessed, and every single person in the department thinks he's being paranoid. He's not. LaGuerta has a complicated relationship with nearly everyone in the building. She's been secretly involved with Doakes for years. She plays politics like chess, and she has a blind spot for Dexter that borders on affection. She'll protect him, promote him, and vouch for him. Not because she's naive, but because Dexter is very, very good at being exactly what people need him to be. Then the ice truck killer shows up. Bodies start appearing around Miami. Women, cut apart with surgical precision and completely drained of blood. No mess, no trace evidence, no mistakes. Dexter is fascinated. Whoever this killer is, their technique is flawless, better than his. When a refrigerated truck is found with frozen fingertips painted in different colored nail polish, the whole department scrambles. But Dexter isn't horrified, he's impressed. And then things get personal. The ice truck killer starts leaving messages specifically for Dexter. A doll's head on his refrigerator, body parts placed at locations from Dexter's childhood, his favorite beach, places Harry took him as a kid. Each drop-off is a breadcrumb, and only Dexter can follow the trail. He withholds this from the police because explaining why a serial killer killer is sending him love notes would raise questions he can't afford to answer. Early on, Dexter also makes a decision that will haunt him. He catches a teenager named Jeremy Downs, who killed his abusive foster father. The kid fits the code. But Dexter looks at Jeremy and sees a younger version of himself, someone who might be saved. So instead of killing him, Dexter tells Jeremy to channel his darkness. Only hurt people who deserve it. Jeremy takes the advice literally. He goes back to his cell and ends his own life. Dexter stands in the morgue staring at the body and realizes that mercy has consequences too. The department arrests a suspect named Neil Perry, a disturbed taxidermist who confesses to everything. Case closed. Except Dexter visits Perry in jail, and the man doesn't recognize him at all. The ice truck killer is still out there, and Dexter smiles. Because whatever this is, it's not over.
Meanwhile, Debra starts dating a guy named Rudy Cooper, a prosthetics specialist she met at the hospital. He's charming, attentive, and weirdly interested in Dexter. He shows up at Dexter's apartment with steaks and beer. He inserts himself into family trips. He asks Debra questions about her brother that she doesn't find unusual, but should. There's also the matter of Rita Bennett. When we meet her, she's a damaged woman raising 2 kids and trying to rebuild after an abusive marriage. She sees Dexter as safe, gentle, the kind of man who would never raise his voice, let alone his hand. She's right about the voice. She's catastrophically wrong about the rest. But their relationship works because Dexter needs a cover story and Rita needs someone who won't hurt her. They're both getting something from the arrangement. They just don't realize they're reading different contracts. Dexter's personal life gets complicated when Rita's ex-husband Paul gets out of prison. Paul is violent, manipulative, and immediately starts pushing boundaries with the kids. When Paul attacks Rita in her own bedroom, she fights back with a baseball bat, but Paul files assault charges against her. Dexter handles it his own way, breaks into Paul's motel room, knocks him out with a frying pan, plants drugs, and calls the cops. Paul goes back to prison. Problem solved. Except Rita later finds a shoe outside her house that Paul swore Dexter left behind when he dragged him out. A loose thread that will pull at Rita's trust for seasons to come. Paul keeps screaming from behind bars that Dexter set him up. Nobody believes him. Then another inmate beats Paul to death with a pipe. The shoe becomes the only evidence of the truth, and Rita buries it, along with her doubt. The ice truck killer escalates. He fills an entire hotel room with blood from 5 different victims. The room number is 103. A radio is tuned to 103 FM. A Bible is open to a passage on page 103. Dexter walks into that room and collapses. Not from the blood, from a memory. A memory of being a small child, sitting in something wet and red, watching his mother get cut apart in a shipping container. Dexter has been carrying this inside him his entire life without knowing it. Dexter doesn't tell anyone. Not Debra, not Rita. He sits with this recovered memory like a man holding a grenade with the pin already out. He starts digging. He finds the truth. His biological mother, Laura Moser, was a police informant who was murdered on October 3rd, 1973. The date, October 3rd, is the number the ice truck killer has been embedding in every crime scene. This killer didn't just know Dexter's childhood, this killer lived it. Then Angel Batista gets stabbed in a parking garage after connecting a lead between an amputee fetishist and the ice truck killer. The attacker left blood on Angel's collar. Dexter runs the sample. It matches blood he finds on a glass at Rudy Cooper's apartment, and Rudy has a fresh wound on his lip. Debra's boyfriend is the ice truck killer. Dexter tries to warn Debra, but Rudy lures her onto a yacht with the promise of a proposal. When Debra finds evidence on the boat and realizes the truth, Rudy chokes her unconscious and ties her up with duct tape. Dexter races to find her, following the trail to a shipping container at the docks, the same type of container where his mother was murdered. Inside, he finds Rudy waiting for him, candles flickering, plastic sheeting on the walls, the same setup Dexter uses, and Rudy is standing there with a smile that says he's been waiting for this his entire life. He reveals everything. His real name is Brian Moser. He's Dexter's biological brother. They were both in that shipping container when their mother was killed. Harry adopted Dexter but left Brian behind in the foster system, where he was institutionalized for antisocial personality disorder. Brian grew up alone, broken, and furious, and spent years tracking down the brother who got the life he didn't. Brian has Debra wrapped in plastic on a table, just like Dexter's victims. She's conscious, terrified, looking at Dexter and not understanding why her boyfriend brought her here or why her brother is standing in front of her with that expression on his face. Brian lays it all out. He wants Dexter to kill her, to choose blood over the family that replaced them, to shed the mask Harry built for him and embrace what they both are. 2 brothers, born in a shipping container, forged in blood. Brian sees this as a homecoming, a reunion, the moment they finally become a family again. Dexter looks at Debra, looks at Brian, and for one terrible second, the audience isn't sure what he's going to do. Dexter refuses. He tackles Brian, and the police arrive just in time to save Debra. Brian escapes, but later that night, Brian shows up at Dexter's apartment, and Dexter is waiting. He subdues his brother, strings him up in Brian's own kill room, and listens as Brian begs him to be who he really is. Brian tells Dexter he's choosing to live a lie for people who will never truly know him. And Brian's right. Dexter knows he's right, but he slices his brother's throat anyway because Brian will never stop trying to kill Debra. Dexter stages it as self-inflicted and walks away. Season 1 ends with Dexter returning to his normal life. Rita, the kids, donuts at work, but Doakes is still watching. Rita found the shoe, and somewhere inside Dexter, a door opened that Harry spent a lifetime trying to keep shut. The monster chose his mask over his brother. He chose Debra over Brian. He chose the lie over the truth. And for now, the mask holds. But a mask is only as strong as the face underneath it, and Dexter Morgan's face is starting to crack.
If Season 1 was about Dexter finding his brother and choosing his mask, Season 2 is about the mask cracking from the outside in. It opens with a problem Dexter never planned for. A team of scuba divers finds garbage bags at the bottom of the ocean near Bay Harbor. Dozens of them. Each one containing cut-apart body parts from Dexter's victims. His personal dumping ground, the spot he's been using for years, has been discovered, and the media dubs the unknown killer the Bay Harbor Butcher. The FBI sends Special Agent Frank Lundy to lead the investigation. Lundy is calm, methodical, and terrifyingly smart. He sets up a task force inside Miami Metro, which means Dexter is now working alongside the people trying to catch him. And to make it worse, Lundy starts identifying the victims. 13 of them have criminal records. A pattern is forming. The Butcher isn't random. He targets people who escaped justice. Lundy tells the team he's looking for someone with a twisted set of principles. Dexter is standing 3 feet away when he says it. Meanwhile, Dexter is falling apart. Killing his brother broke something inside him. He can't perform his ritual anymore. He captures little Chino, a gang leader who murdered a woman and her son. But when Chino wakes up mid-procedure and rips out of the plastic wrap, Dexter barely escapes. He can't kill. He can't sleep with Rita. He can't do anything right. It's like his whole operating system crashed. He eventually tracks little Chino to a freight elevator and finishes the job with the man's own machete. But the sloppy recovery only confirms what Dexter already knows. He's slipping. Debra is slipping too, though nobody talks about it. The ice truck killer wrapped her in plastic, strapped her to a table, and nearly killed her. That kind of trauma doesn't just go away because the credits rolled. She's having nightmares. She punches a random man in a bar who gets too close. She flinches at the gym when someone brushes past her. She can barely sleep alone. Debra Morgan is held together by caffeine, rage, and the absolute refusal to admit she needs help. It works until it doesn't. Debra starts dating Lundy, which is a whole situation. He's twice her age, distinguished, brilliant, and the kind of man who listens when she talks. Debra has a history of falling for the wrong guys. This time she falls for the right one at the worst possible time. Because the closer Debra gets to Lundy, the closer she gets to the investigation that leads straight to her brother. Rita, who found Paul's shoe and heard him insist that Dexter framed him, confronts Dexter about his disappearances and strange behavior. Dexter, cornered, tells her he's an addict. Rita, a woman who survived an abusive husband with a substance problem, hears the word addict, and it actually makes her feel better, because at least it's something she understands. She insists Dexter attend Narcotics Anonymous meetings, which is how he meets Lila Tournay. Lila is beautiful, British, and completely unhinged. She's an artist who talks about dark passengers and inner demons with the fluency of someone who lives there full-time. When Dexter takes her to the field morgue on impulse and shows her a body from the Bay Harbor Butcher case, his own work, Lila touches the corpse and says, "The person who did this is like us, good and evil." She doesn't know she's talking to the killer. She just sees something in Dexter that nobody else has ever recognized. This is the problem with Lila. She sees the real Dexter and isn't afraid. That's seductive for a man who spent his entire life hiding behind a mask. But she's also an arsonist who burns down her own loft to manipulate him, a stalker who sends one of Dexter's mother's killers to attack him at a bowling alley, and eventually, a kidnapper who drugs a babysitter and locks Astor and Cody in a burning building. Lila is what happens when someone with no moral code connects with someone whose moral code is the only thing keeping them human. Dexter sleeps with Lila. Rita finds out. The fallout is immediate and brutal. Rita throws Dexter out. Debra calls Lila a gross English titty vampire to her face. And Dexter, who was using Lila as a sponsor for his fake addiction, discovers that the one person who seemed to understand his darkness is actually more dangerous than anyone he's hunted. Lila breaks into Rita's house. Lila shows up uninvited to Astor's school play. Lila has the boundaries of a forest fire and the emotional stability of a hand grenade. While Dexter is juggling Rita, Lila, and a full-blown identity crisis, the Butcher investigation keeps closing in. Masuka finds algae on the recovered bodies that could pinpoint the killer's marina. Dexter sabotages the field morgue by breaking the AC unit, hoping the bodies will decompose beyond use. They do, but the algae samples were stored separately. A manifesto Dexter plants to throw off the investigation backfires when Lundy deduces the author has a law enforcement background. Every move Dexter makes to create distance only brings the investigation closer, and Lundy is patient. Lundy is always patient. And then two things happen that change the course of everything. First, Doakes catches Dexter in the act. He's been following Dexter relentlessly all season, confronting him in alleys, tailing his car, getting in his face in the break room. Nobody believed Doakes. Nobody took his instincts seriously. And after finding Dexter's blood slide collection hidden behind his air conditioner, he tracks Dexter's boat to a cabin in the Everglades. He finds Dexter standing over a cut-apart body. Dexter attacks, takes a bullet graze to the thigh, and locks Doakes in a cage inside the cabin. Second, Dexter learns the truth about Harry. He discovers from Captain Matthews that Harry didn't die of heart disease. He took his own life, swallowed every pill in his medicine cabinet. And when Dexter presses Doakes for more details, the full picture emerges through flashbacks. Harry walked in on teenage Dexter cutting apart his first kill, a man named Juan Rhinus, that Harry himself had practically authorized. Seeing the code in action, seeing what his son actually looked like covered in blood and smiling, broke Harry completely. He told Dexter to stay away and swallowed every pill he had. The man who built the code couldn't survive seeing it work, and Dexter, who spent his entire childhood believing his father was the one person who truly accepted him, now realizes that Harry's love came with a limit Dexter crossed just by being exactly what Harry trained him to be. Dexter now has Doakes caged, the FBI on his trail, and the knowledge that his father took his own life because of what he created. He's on the edge of turning himself in. He spends one last day on his boat with Rita and the kids. He signs over a living trust to Debra. He's ready to end it. Then Lila solves his problem for him. Using a GPS device she stole from Dexter, she finds the cabin and discovers Doakes in the cage. Doakes tells her Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher. Lila's response is not to free Doakes. It's not to call the police. It's to turn on the gas stove and open the propane tank. She walks out of the cabin and it explodes behind her. Doakes is dead. The FBI finds his body alongside cut-apart remains Dexter left at the cabin. With all the evidence pointing to a dead man, the Bay Harbor butcher case is officially closed. James Doakes, the only person in Miami who ever saw through Dexter's mask, goes down in history as a serial killer. LaGuardia is the only person who refuses to believe it. She attends his memorial service. Almost nobody else comes. She stands there alone, mourning a man the entire city thinks was a monster. Remember that, because Maria LaGuardia's loyalty to the truth about James Doakes will shape everything that happens in Season 7. Dexter breaks up with Lila, but she retaliates by kidnapping Astor and Cody and locking them in a burning building. Dexter rescues the kids by ramming through a wall, and then he goes hunting. He tracks Lila across the Atlantic, finds her in Paris. She's sitting in an apartment full of stolen art and candles, living like a bohemian ghost. She doesn't run. She doesn't even seem surprised. Maybe she always knew it would end this way. Dexter kills her with a stab to the heart. Clean, quiet. A courtesy she didn't deserve, but a code he still follows. Season 2 ends with Dexter back in Rita's bed, back at work, back to donuts and smiles. The Bay Harbor butcher is solved. Doakes is buried. Lundy leaves Miami, and Dexter is free. But Debra skipped her flight to Oregon with Lundy to help find those kids. She chose her family over the man she loved. Remember that, because Dexter Morgan will keep choosing her family over everything, right up until the moment it destroys her.
Seasons 1 and 2 tested Dexter's ability to survive. Season 3 tests something far more dangerous, his ability to trust. Because Season 3 introduces the most dangerous thing Dexter Morgan has ever encountered. Not a killer, not a cop, a friend. It starts with a mistake. Dexter is hunting a drug dealer named Freebo, who killed 2 sorority girls. He tracks Freebo to a house, but when he enters, someone attacks him in the dark. Dexter fights back, stabs the man, and watches him die on the floor. One problem. It's not Freebo, it's Oscar Prado, a young guy who owed Freebo money and came looking for him. Oscar has no criminal record, no victims. He's just some kid who was in the wrong place, and now he's dead because Dexter killed him before confirming his target. This is the first time Dexter has broken the code by killing an innocent person, and it rattles him more than he expects. Not because he feels guilt in the way a normal person would, but because the code is the only thing separating him from the monsters he hunts. Without it, he's just a man who kills people. And that distinction is the thin wire his entire identity is balanced on. Oscar has 2 brothers. Ramon, a hothead sheriff's deputy who will later be caught roughing up a suspect for information about Freebo and forced to surrender his badge. And Miguel Prado, an assistant district attorney who is charming, connected, politically ambitious, and grief-stricken over his baby brother's death. When the department investigates Oscar's murder, Miguel inserts himself into Dexter's orbit. He wants answers. He wants justice. And because Dexter feels genuine guilt about Oscar, he lets Miguel get close. Here's where things get complicated. While searching for Freebo to finish the job, Dexter finds him hiding at a girlfriend's place and kills him. But Miguel sees Dexter leaving the scene. He puts it together, and instead of turning Dexter in, Miguel thanks him. He thinks Dexter killed the man who murdered his brother, and he wants more. Miguel starts pushing for a deeper friendship. Dinners, favors, late-night conversations about justice and the people who escape it.
He tells Dexter about a defense attorney named Ellen Wolf, who gets guilty clients acquitted through intimidation and corruption. He suggests she deserves to die. And Dexter, who has never had a real friend, who has spent his entire life pretending to connect with people, finds himself genuinely tempted by the idea of having a partner. Meanwhile, Rita tells Dexter she's pregnant, which is the kind of news that would terrify a normal man. And Dexter Morgan is approximately 900 miles from normal. He proposes anyway, because that's what you do when you're pretending to be human and someone hands you the next line in the script. Rita says yes. Wedding planning begins. And if you've ever wondered what happens when a serial killer has to pick out wedding bands and taste test hazelnut cake, Season 3 answers that question. There's also a subplot that tells you everything about Debra's position in the department. Internal Affairs agent Yuki Amato is pressuring Debra to wear a wire against Quinn, dangling her detective shield as leverage. Yuki shows up at crime scenes, at diners, in parking garages, pushing harder each time. Debra is caught between loyalty and ambition. She eventually tells Yuki to shove it, because that's what Debra does. She picks a side and stands on it until it crumbles under her feet. And then there's a moment that tells you everything about who Dexter is underneath the ritual. While shopping at a supermarket, Dexter spots a registered predator named Nathan Martin chatting up his stepdaughter Aster in the cereal aisle. Dexter doesn't make a scene. He memorizes the license plate. Then he goes home, runs the name, confirms the record, and puts Nathan on his list. Because that's how Dexter Morgan protects his family. Not with a phone call to the police, with a list. And here's the thing about Miguel. He's not faking the friendship. That's what makes him dangerous. He genuinely likes Dexter. He genuinely believes they're the same kind of person. Men who understand that the justice system is broken and are willing to do something about it. But Miguel's definition of deserving to die keeps expanding. First, it's murderers. Then it's people who inconvenience him. Then it's Ellen Wolf, who is guilty of nothing more than being extremely good at her job. Dexter tells Miguel they can't kill Ellen. She doesn't fit the code. Miguel explodes. He loses his temper the way powerful men do. Controlled fury with an edge that says he's done being told no. Dexter backs off. For a moment, it seems like the friendship is over.
But then Miguel apologizes. Smooth as silk. Says he lost control, that Dexter was right to rein him in. They toast. They reconcile. Miguel asks Dexter to be his best man, and Dexter asks Miguel the same. Then Dexter does something Harry explicitly warned him never to do. He teaches Miguel to kill. They pick a target together. Billy Fleeter, a debt enforcer who's been beating people to death over gambling money. Dexter walks Miguel through the whole process. Surveillance, confirmation, the kill room. Miguel stabs Fleeter and says he feels fantastic. Dexter insists on handling the body disposal alone. And in his head, Harry's voice tells him that sharing the code was a mistake, that Dexter is now responsible for whatever Miguel does next. Harry was right. He's always right. That's the curse of having a dead man as your conscience. Harry never shuts up, and he never makes mistakes. He just shows up in Dexter's mind at the worst possible moment and says the thing Dexter already knows but doesn't want to hear. Running alongside all of this is the Skinner case. Bodies are showing up around Miami with strips of skin removed. The killer turns out to be George King, a former Nicaraguan military interrogator posing as a tree trimmer. He's looking for Freebo, who owed him money. Debra cracks the case wide open by connecting palm leaves at crime scenes to tree trimming routes. But King grabs Anton Briggs, a musician Debra's been falling for, and works him over for information on Freebo's whereabouts. Debra and Quinn find Anton alive, but barely conscious, with a chunk of his back carved away. King escapes. There's also Camilla Figg, an old records clerk who was friends with Harry and who destroyed Dexter's sealed files years ago to protect him. She's dying of cancer, and she asks Dexter to end her suffering. He says no at first, then he brings her a key lime pie. He closes the drapes, injects an euthanizing agent into a slice, and feeds it to her bite by bite. "You finally brought me the perfect pie," she says. As she dies, Dexter whispers that he killed his brother. Camilla opens her eyes one last time and says, "It's good, you did." I'm not going to make a joke here. That scene earns its silence. Back to Miguel. Everything falls apart when Ellen Wolf disappears. Dexter finds her body buried in a cemetery and realizes Miguel killed her on his own, without permission, without the code. Dexter confronts him. Miguel doesn't deny it. He says they have different ideas of justice, and reminds Dexter of the blood-stained shirt he gave him as a trophy after the Freebo kill, a token of mutual trust. So Dexter goes to test that shirt. The blood on it isn't Freebo's. It's not even human.
It's cow's blood. Miguel Prado has been playing Dexter Morgan from the very beginning. He never trusted Dexter. He used him. The friendship, the vulnerability, the late-night confessions, all of it was manipulation by a man who wanted a weapon he could aim. Dexter didn't create a monster. He was used by one. When Dexter tries to cut ties, Miguel threatens him. Not subtly. I am the last person you want to mess with because I will come back at you in ways you never even imagined. An anonymous tip, couple of search warrants. Who knows what the police might find in your apartment or on that little boat of yours? You got the ring, I got City Hall. That's not a disagreement. That's a declaration of war.
Dexter steals Ellen's wedding ring from Miguel's cigar box, a trophy the idiot kept, and plants evidence to build leverage. But Miguel retaliates by threatening to destroy Debra's career through an ethics investigation. Then he calls George King and tells him that Dexter knows where Freebo is. He's sending a killer after Dexter. So Dexter does what he does. He lures Miguel to Ellen Wolf's house, the scene of Miguel's crime, and wraps him in plastic. When Miguel begs for his life and says, "I accept you like a brother," Dexter replies, "I killed my brother. I killed yours too." Miguel screams. Dexter wraps a wire around his neck. "You little freak! You think I'm done with you? It doesn't end here!" Miguel shouts. "It does for you," Dexter answers, and pulls the wire tight. Dexter stages the body to look like a Skinner kill. George King gets blamed for killing an ADA, which puts the entire department on high alert. But King isn't done. The night before Dexter's wedding, King ambushes him outside a clothing shop and drags him to an abandoned tobacco warehouse. Dexter wakes up tied to a table, about to have strips of flesh removed. And in that moment, strapped down, helpless, facing a man with a machete, Dexter realizes something he's never felt before. He wants to live. Not because of the code, not because of Harry, because he wants to raise his son. He wants to be Rita's husband. He wants a life that isn't just performance. So he breaks his own hand to slip the rope, fights King hand to hand, and snaps his neck just as police sirens close in. King's body falls onto a squad car. Dexter escapes through a window. He shows up to his wedding with a cast on his hand and blood under his bandages. Rita doesn't ask questions. Debra helps him with his tie. And Dexter Morgan, serial killer, blood spatter analyst, brother killer, friend killer, stands at the altar and makes vows that are, for the first time in his life, completely honest. During the reception, a single drop of blood falls from his cast onto the back of Rita's white wedding dress. She doesn't notice. Life is good, Dexter thinks. And Debra gets her detective shield. Angel recommended her for saving Anton and identifying the Skinner. Maria signs off, and Debra Morgan finally becomes what Harry always wanted her to be. She tells Dexter the news and adds, "The Morgans are going to be all right." 3 seasons in, the Morgans are not going to be all right. If seasons 1 through 3 were about Dexter learning what he could survive, season 4 is about learning what he can't. It's the one people remember. The one critics called the best season of television Showtime ever produced. And the one that ends with a scene so devastating that fans are still arguing about it 20 years later. It starts with Dexter Morgan trying to be a normal husband and father. He's married. He has a baby son named Harrison. He's moved to the suburbs. He has neighbors who invite him to barbecues and a wife who sings along to Karma Chameleon in the car, and he hasn't slept in weeks. Harrison won't stop crying. Dexter is running on caffeine and desperation. He screws up so badly in court that a killer named Benito Gomez walks free on botched blood evidence. He falls asleep in his car outside a bar while waiting to grab Gomez and wakes up to a cop tapping on his window. He eventually catches and kills Gomez, but the sloppy ritual tells him something is wrong. He's losing control. And then he falls asleep behind the wheel and flips his car on the highway with garbage bags full of cut-apart body parts in the trunk. He crawls out of the wreck, stuffs the bags into the trunk of a nearby car, and walks away covered in blood. Fatherhood is going great. Meanwhile, a new serial killer arrives in Miami. The department doesn't know it yet, but the audience does. We watch a man walk into a stranger's bathroom, climb into the bathtub with a woman, and slit her femoral artery. The water turns red. He holds up a mirror to watch her face as she dies. Frank Lundy comes back. He's retired from the FBI now, but he's been chasing one case on his own. A killer he's dubbed the Trinity Killer. 3 victims per cycle. A woman bled in a bathtub. A mother forced to jump from a building. A man beaten to death. The same pattern, repeated in different cities across the country for at least 30 years. Nobody at the FBI believed Lundy. Nobody thought one person could kill for 3 decades without being caught. Dexter is fascinated. 30 years of killing without a single mistake. No forensic evidence. No witnesses. No pattern anyone caught until a retired FBI agent decided to spend his pension on cold cases and corkboards. That's not just a serial killer, that's a master.
And Dexter, who is currently dropping baby bottles and mishandling evidence, desperately wants to know the secret. Dexter tracks Trinity to an office building and watches him beat a man to death with a framing hammer through a security monitor. He gets a clear look at the killer's face. Then he follows the gray van to the suburbs, syringe ready, expecting Trinity to lead him to some isolated hideout. Instead, the van pulls into the driveway of a warm, well-lit family home. A wife greets him at the door. 2 kids run up to hug him. Arthur Mitchell, high school teacher, church deacon, charity volunteer, husband, father, walks inside and closes the door. Lundy was wrong about one thing. The most successful serial killer in American history isn't a lone wolf drifting through life. He's a family man, just like Dexter. And that changes everything about how Dexter approaches the hunt. Because if Arthur Mitchell can maintain a family for 30 years while doing what he does, then maybe the life Dexter is struggling to build isn't impossible. Maybe he just needs a better teacher. That hope is the trap, and it takes 12 episodes to spring it. Because that's the question Season 4 spends 12 episodes answering. Can a monster truly have a family? Or does the family just become another set of victims?
Dexter doesn't kill Arthur right away. He wants to learn from him. He invents an alias, Kyle Butler, and inserts himself into Arthur's life through his church and his charity, 4 Walls, 1 Heart, which builds homes for the homeless. Arthur takes Kyle under his wing. They chop down trees together. They work build sites. Arthur gives Dexter fatherly advice about marriage, about letting your family save you. But cracks appear fast. Arthur's son Jonah confesses to Dexter that his father beats him. At Thanksgiving dinner, Arthur deliberately snaps Jonah's finger at the table as punishment for damaging his car, just reaches across the mashed potatoes and breaks his own son's index finger. The family keeps eating. His daughter Rebecca has locks on the outside of her bedroom door, not to keep people out, to keep her in. His wife Sally lives in permanent terror. When Dexter confronts Rebecca in the garden, she offers to do anything he wants if he'll let her stay with him. She's 15. Sally walks out and tells Dexter she doesn't care what he does with her daughter, just don't tell Arthur. That's the kind of family Arthur Mitchell built. 30 years of killing strangers, and the real horror was always inside the house. Arthur is what happens when a monster doesn't have a code, when there's no Harry, no framework, no target list, just a man and his pain and the people unlucky enough to live under his roof. Dexter digs into the past and discovers why Arthur kills in threes. His sister Vera died in a shower when Arthur was 10. She slipped and shattered the glass shower door, severing her femoral artery while he watched. His mother, destroyed by grief, jumped off a bridge 2 years later. His father, a violent alcoholic, was beaten to death in an alley shortly after that. Arthur has been recreating their deaths in city after city for 30 years, carrying his sister's ashes in a glass vial and smearing them at each crime scene like a signature. But Lundy missed something. It's not 3 victims per cycle, it's 4. Before each bathtub kill, a 10-year-old boy goes missing. Arthur kidnaps a child the same age he was when his sister died, dresses him in cowboy pajamas, feeds him poisoned ice cream, and buries him in cement at a 4 Walls build site. He keeps them in a hidden underground bomb shelter beneath his house, complete with a model train set and a record player spinning vintage songs. The boy represents Arthur himself, the innocent child destroyed by trauma. Lundy never connected the missing children to the murders because they were never reported as homicides. Dexter saves one of those boys, a kid named Scott Smith, drugged and zipped into a bag, seconds from being buried in wet cement at a construction site. Dexter fights Arthur at the build site, knocks him unconscious with a shovel, and pulls the boy out alive. But Arthur escapes. And now Arthur knows that Kyle Butler isn't who he says he is. Arthur also discovers a Cold War-era bomb shelter beneath his house where he keeps the boys before burying them. Model trains running in circles, old records playing on a turntable, cowboy pajamas folded neatly on the bed. It's a shrine to a childhood Arthur never got to finish, built on the bodies of children who'll never finish theirs. Meanwhile, Dexter's personal life is cracking too. His neighbor, Elliot Larson, who seems like a decent guy with a lawnmower and a six-pack, kisses Rita one night while they're waiting for an oven timer. She kisses him back before pulling away. It's brief, it's nothing, but it's everything because it means Rita is lonely enough to lean into someone who's actually present, and Dexter is never present. Running alongside all of this is the investigation into who shot Debra and Lundy, because somebody did. Debra took a bullet to the hip and survived. Lundy took 2 to the chest and didn't. The department initially blames Johnny Rose, a vacation murderer they've been hunting, but Debra figures out the trajectory doesn't match. Her shooter was short, then she notices something else.
Christine Hill, the reporter Quinn's been sleeping with, new details about the shooting that were never made public. Christine knew that Debra was looking into Lundy's eyes when he died. Christine is Arthur's secret daughter from an affair years earlier. She'd been following Lundy, saw him bump into Arthur on the street, and shot Lundy to protect her father. She wormed her way into Quinn's bed to monitor the investigation from the inside. When Debra and Angel confront Christine with the evidence, she finally confesses. Then she puts a gun under her chin and pulls the trigger while Debra is sitting 3 feet away. I'm not going to make a joke here either. So now we're at the end. Arthur knows Dexter's real name. He walked into Miami Metro, found a bowling team photo with Dexter's face on it, and said the 4 words that define this entire season. Hello, Dexter Morgan. Dexter has to move fast. He frames a trucker named Stan Beaudry for the Trinity murders to buy time. He plants Arthur's DNA at the trucker's shack, but Arthur is liquidating his bank accounts and preparing to run. Dexter catches him at a parking garage, injects him with M99, and loads him into the van. Then a road rage incident with a broken side mirror gets Dexter arrested by sheriff's deputies. By the time he's released, Arthur has woken up and vanished. Arthur ransacks his own family for cash. He grabs Sally's wedding ring off her finger. He screams at his children with a fury that's been building for 30 years. Jonah tries to stand up to him. Arthur shoves him into a wall. Sally just stands there. She's been standing there for decades. And then Arthur Mitchell walks out the front door of his own house for the last time. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't look back. He just disappears. The FBI takes over the Trinity case. Debra watches them dismantle months of her work without credit. And then she pulls Dexter aside and tells him something she's discovered. His biological mother was a woman named Laura Moser, and his brother was Brian Moser, the ice truck killer. Dexter acts shocked. Debra tells him it's not his fault. She tells him she loves him. He says he's grateful.
But Dexter doesn't give up. He catches up to Arthur on a country road when the Mustang's engine dies, sputters, grinds to a stop in the middle of nowhere. Because Dexter stole the oil cap, he wraps Arthur in plastic one last time. Arthur tells Dexter he'll never be able to control what's inside him. I tried, Arthur says. I prayed to be changed. Dexter answers, that's not trying. That's just waiting to be stopped. Arthur asks Dexter to start the model train set. He does. Then Dexter raises the framing hammer, claw side down, and strikes. He dumps Arthur Mitchell's body in the Gulf Stream under a full moon. He feels free. He thinks about Rita looking at the same moon from the Florida Keys, where she's waiting for him with Harrison. He thinks it's time to embrace his family, to leave the darkness behind. Dexter drives home with the windows down. The air smells like salt and freedom. He's done. Arthur is gone. The nightmare is over. He's going to pack his bags, fly to the Keys, and hold his wife. He's going to be a real father, a real husband. For the first time in his life, the future doesn't scare him. There's a message on his phone from Rita. She forgot her ID and had to come back for it. She's taking a later flight, but she'll still be waiting for him. He can hear her phone ringing inside the house. It's in her purse. Her purse is on a kitchen chair. Then he hears Harrison crying. He follows the sound to the bathroom. He turns on the light. Rita is lying in the bathtub. The water is red. She's gone. Arthur Mitchell killed her before Dexter ever got to him. And Harrison, his infant son, is sitting on the bathroom floor, covered in his mother's blood, wailing. Dexter picks up his son and sees himself, 3 years old, sitting in blood in a shipping container while his mother was cut apart. The same origin story, the same baptism. Harrison is now what Dexter was. Harry was right. He can't change who he is. 4 seasons in and the show just proved it. If this story has you gripped, and I know it does, do me a favor and subscribe, because we're not even halfway through. Rita's death isn't the darkest place this show goes. It's not even close. What happens to Debra in the next 4 seasons makes what happened to Rita look like a bad day at the office. Hit subscribe, and let's keep going. Everything Dexter built in the first 4 seasons is gone. Rita is dead, his children are traumatized, and his son just experienced the same blood baptism that created Dexter in the first place. Season 5 opens with Dexter standing outside his house holding a screaming baby while police process the crime scene inside. When Debra runs up and asks what happened, Dexter says 2 words, "It was me." He means it as confession. Everyone takes it as grief. Dexter falls apart, not in the way he fell apart after killing Brian or after learning Harry took his own life. This is different. This is real. He can't write an obituary. He can't pick a casket. He walks through a funeral home watching other people grieve and tries to copy their behavior like he's studying for a test he'll never pass. He sends Aster and Cody to live with their grandparents in Orlando because Aster can barely look at him. She tells Dexter the family would have been better off if her mother had never met him, and Dexter can't argue, because she's right. Every major catastrophe in Rita's life traces back to the moment she met the nice guy from the grocery store. The nice guy with the boat and the garbage bags. When Dexter tries to say goodbye to Aster and Cody, Aster tells him not to come back.
She's 13 years old and she's already figured out what nobody in Miami Metro ever could: that something about Dexter Morgan is fundamentally wrong. For the first time in 8 seasons, Dexter Morgan has no plan. No code to follow, no Harry whispering in his ear, just a dead wife, a baby who won't stop screaming, and the crushing awareness that everything he touches eventually bleeds. He considers disappearing entirely. He burns his storage unit, loads up his boat, and heads out to sea. But he stops at a dock fueling station, and a belligerent stranger makes a crack about his dead wife. Dexter beats the man to death with a grappling hook in a bathroom. Standing over the body, shaking, Harry's ghost appears and tells him it was the first human thing he's done since Rita died. Dexter screams and cries for the first time, not because he killed a man, because he finally felt something while doing it. He goes back for the funeral. Then he finds the Barrel Girls. This is where Season 5 pivots from grief story to something else entirely. Boyd Fowler, a dead animal pickup worker, has been kidnapping women, holding them captive, and disposing of their bodies in barrels in the Everglades. Dexter discovers his secret and kills him, but when he opens the attic door in Boyd's house, he finds someone still alive. A battered woman named Lumen Pierce, staring at him with the kind of terror that comes from weeks of captivity. Lumen has rope burns on her wrists, bruises on her neck, and eyes that have seen things no therapy session will ever fully reach. And here's where it gets complicated. Lumen saw Dexter kill Boyd. She's a witness to murder. The code says Dexter should eliminate the threat. Instead, he cleans her wounds and hides her, because when he looks at Lumen, he sees something familiar. Not a victim, not a threat, a survivor. Someone born in blood just like him. Lumen reveals that Boyd wasn't working alone. There were others. A group of men who took turns victimizing women. She can identify them by voice, by touch, by the specific things they said while she was blindfolded. She wants to find them. She wants them dead. Dexter tells her to go home to Minnesota. She goes to the airport, gets pulled aside for a body search, has a panic attack, and comes right back to Miami. So they hunt together. And for the first time since Rita died, Dexter feels connected to another person. Not through performance, not through mimicry, through shared damage. Lumen doesn't need Dexter to pretend. She needs him to be exactly what he is, a man who kills people who deserve it. And right now, the people who deserve it are the men who destroyed her. The trail leads up to Jordan Chase, a famous motivational speaker who runs seminars about self-empowerment. Packed auditoriums, best-selling books, the kind of guy who tells a crowd of 3,000 people to take it and they all stand up and cheer. His real name is Eugene Greer, and 20 years ago, he organized the assaults as a teenager at a summer camp. He never touched the victims himself, he directed the others, watching from behind the camera, whispering instructions. Jordan is the worst kind of monster, the one who creates other monsters and keeps his own hands clean. One by one, Dexter and Lumen take out the group. Cole Harmon, Jordan's hulking bodyguard who shadows him everywhere and who nearly kills Dexter in a bathroom brawl before getting a syringe to the neck. Dan Mendel, a dentist who lives in a nice neighborhood and coaches Little League, and went home every night after hurting women like nothing happened. Alex Tilden, a wealthy businessman who breaks down sobbing on Dexter's table, begging for mercy he never showed to the women in those barrels before Lumen puts the knife in. She whispers, 13, as she drives it home, because she was victim number 13. Each kill brings her closer to something Dexter has never experienced, the possibility that the darkness might actually end. Jordan catches on that someone is hunting his old friends. He beats Emily Birch, the original victim from the camp who had been silently complicit for 20 years, to death with a fireplace poker when she wavers. Then he goes after Lumen directly. Meanwhile, Debra is building the case from the other side, and she's getting dangerously close. She pulls assault kit evidence, interviews surviving victims, and maps out a web of connected predators. She figures out that a surviving victim has been systematically hunting her attackers. She calls this unknown woman and her accomplice vigilantes in love. She has no idea she's describing her own brother.
Quinn, still suspicious of Dexter from the Kyle Butler investigation, hires a disgraced ex-cop named Stan Liddy to surveil him. Liddy plants cameras in Dexter's apartment and gets footage of Dexter and Lumen together at the marina. When Liddy tries to force a confrontation, ambushing Dexter in his own van with a gun, Dexter fights back and kills him. A drop of Liddy's blood lands on Quinn's shoe during a later arrest, and Quinn becomes the prime suspect in Liddy's disappearance. When Dexter is asked to analyze the blood on the shoe, he lies, says the sample was degraded. Inconclusive. Quinn walks free because the man he was investigating decided to save him. The season reaches its climax when Jordan kidnaps Lumen and takes her to an old summer camp, the same place where it all started 20 years ago. Dexter tracks him there, but Jordan catches him first. He ties Dexter up and throws him down a flight of stairs, but Dexter hid a knife in an empty pocket of his roll, stabs Jordan in the foot, and subdues him. Lumen drives the final blade into Jordan Chase's chest. Then Debra shows up. She finds Jordan's body. She sees two silhouettes standing behind plastic sheeting. She aims her gun. She orders them not to move, and then she makes a choice. She tells them to be gone within an hour. She holsters her gun. She walks away without looking. She never sees their faces. And in that
moment, Debra Morgan crosses a line that every cop is trained to hold. She let killers walk, on purpose, because her gut told her justice and the law aren't always the same thing. It's the most important decision of her career, and she makes it in the dark, alone, with a dead body at her feet. Debra Morgan let 2 killers walk free because she believed. Dexter and Lumen dumped Jordan's body in the ocean. That night, Lumen tells Dexter she's leaving. Her dark passenger is gone. The need to kill vanished the moment Jordan disappeared under the water. She can't stay with someone who can't stop. Dexter throws 2 plates at the wall. Then he looks at her and says, "Don't be sorry your darkness is gone. I'll carry it for you. Always. I'll keep it with mine." Lumen leaves. And here's the cruelty of it. She got better. The darkness left her. She's proof that the dark passenger can be killed, that the damage doesn't have to be permanent, but only for her, not for Dexter. He watches the one person who understood him walk out the door because she was healed by the same process that keeps him sick. Dexter removes his wedding ring. He sits alone at Harrison's first birthday party, surrounded by people who love him, watching his son blow out a candle, and thinks about how wishes are for children, and monsters don't get wishes.
After losing Rita and watching Lumen walk out the door, Dexter enters Season 6 doing something he's never done before, looking for meaning beyond the kill. Season 6 opens with something Dexter has never really dealt with before: faith. Harrison is starting preschool at a Catholic school, and the admissions director isn't thrilled when Dexter admits he doesn't believe in anything. Which tracks. Hard to find God when your hobby involves garbage bags and a boat. But then Harrison gets rushed to the hospital with appendicitis. And while his son is in surgery, Dexter stands in front of a vending machine and prays. He's never prayed before. He doesn't know who he's talking to. But for the first time in his life, there's something he can't control with a syringe and a roll of plastic wrap. Harrison survives, and Dexter is left wondering whether he just got lucky or whether something hurt him. But here's the thing about Season 6. It introduces 2 characters who will push Dexter in completely different spiritual directions. The first is Brother Sam, an ex-con turned mechanic turned pastor who genuinely believes people can change. His own father was a hired killer. Sam grew up in violence, dealt violence, and then one day decided to stop. He runs a garage that employs former criminals, and he's the real deal. Not a con artist, not working an angle, just a man who found something worth holding on to. The second is Travis Marshall, a young man working at a museum who is absolutely convinced he's been chosen by God to bring about the end of days. He's working with Professor James Geller, a former university professor who was fired for stealing an ancient sword. Together, they're staging elaborate murder tableaus ripped straight from the Book of Revelation. Snakes sewn inside a body, 4 horsemen made from cut-apart corpses riding through downtown Miami, an angel of death hanging in a botanical garden, booby-trapped so that when police trip a wire, the body drops and her wings spread open. That last one kills an officer. The Doomsday tableaus are the most elaborate crime scenes Miami Metro has ever processed. Each one is a theological riddle wrapped in human remains. Masuka is equal parts horrified and professionally fascinated. Angel keeps a rosary in his pocket for the first time in years. These aren't just murders, they're performances, and whoever is staging them believes they're doing God's work. The homicide team dubs the unknown killer the Doomsday Killer, and Debra, freshly promoted to lieutenant after a hero moment where she took down a restaurant shooter in a hostage situation. Quinn tried to propose to her that night, got down on one knee in the bathroom mirror, rehearsed his speech, and then gunfire erupted. He never got the words out. Is running point on the Doomsday case, and she's drowning. LaGuardia undermined the Angel Batista promotion to give Deb the job, but only because she wanted someone she could control. When Deb turns out to have a spine, LaGuardia starts sabotaging her at every turn. Meanwhile, Dexter is doing his own investigation. He tracks the museum glue used on one of the tableaus back to Travis, confronts him, and learns something interesting. Travis is conflicted. He let one of the victims go, a woman named Holly Benson, because he couldn't stomach what Geller was asking him to do. Dexter sees something in Travis, a version of himself maybe, someone with a dark passenger who didn't choose to have one. So Dexter makes a decision he's never made before. Instead of killing Travis, he decides to save him. Remove his dark passenger by removing Geller. It's the first time Dexter has tried redemption instead of ritual. And for a man who spent a decade putting people on tables, the idea of putting someone back together feels almost revolutionary. For a few episodes, it actually feels like Dexter might pull this off. Save someone instead of ending them. Use his skills for something that doesn't involve a table and a roll of plastic. But Brother Sam doesn't get saved. He gets gunned down at his own garage. And when Dexter tracks down the real shooter, not the gang member the cops blame, but Nick, a man Sam personally baptized and rehabilitated, something snaps. Sam's dying wish was for Dexter to forgive Nick, to embrace the light. And Dexter tries. He really tries. He takes Nick to the beach where Sam baptized him, and tells him Sam forgives him. Nick's response? Relief that the only witness is dead. Dexter drowns him in the baptism water. So much for the light.
What follows is one of the stranger detours in the series. Dexter's brother Brian, the ice truck killer, very much dead, starts appearing as a hallucination, replacing Harry. Brian doesn't care about codes or rules, he just wants Dexter to have fun. They road trip to Nebraska to investigate whether Arthur Mitchell's son Jonah has started killing. Dexter steals a gun, shoots at road signs, hooks up with a convenience store clerk, and takes out a nosy motel owner with a pitchfork. It's Dexter without guardrails, and it's genuinely unsettling. He eventually learns that Jonah did kill his mother, beat her to death in the kitchen, but only after she drove his sister Rebecca to take her own life by blaming the kids for Arthur's crimes. Sally Mitchell spent years after Arthur's death telling those children that they were the reason their father became a monster. She said it at breakfast. She said it at bedtime. She said it until Rebecca believed her. Dexter sees the conscience in Jonah and lets him go. On the drive home, he literally runs his car through Brian's hallucination and picks up Harry on the side of the road. The code is back. Back in Miami, things escalate. Travis's sister Lisa becomes the next tableau victim, the Woman of Babylon, displayed on the back of an alligator with severed heads around her and Debra's business card pinned to the scene. It's personal now. Travis wakes up chained in the church, and Geller tells him Lisa spoke to the police, so she had to go. This is the moment Travis finally breaks with Geller and agrees to help Dexter find him. And then, the twist. Dexter follows Travis into the church. Travis leads him to Geller, and Dexter finds him in a basement freezer, rigid, frost-covered, dead for years. Geller has been dead this entire time, frozen solid, probably since before the first tableau. Every conversation Travis had with Geller was a conversation with himself. Every argument was internal. Every time Geller pushed Travis to kill, it was Travis's own psyche splitting in half and letting the violent side wear a dead man's face. The man Dexter was trying to save from his dark passenger didn't have a dark passenger. He was the dark passenger. Travis locks Dexter in the church basement and escapes. He recruits 2 followers, Steve and Beth Dorsey, true believers from Geller's blog. Beth walks into Miami Metro with a backpack full of poison gas. Dexter recognizes her from a photo just in time and shoves her into an interview room. She dies, vomiting blood. Dexter gets exposed to the gas and spends the rest of the season with nosebleeds and dizzy spells. Travis goes after Dexter directly. He uses Dexter's stolen keys to break into his apartment, finds a flyer for Harrison's school pageant, and lures Dexter to his boat. He drugs him, puts him in a dinghy surrounded by gasoline, and lights it on fire. Dexter barely escapes. Then Travis takes Harrison, right out of his school pageant, puts on a lion mask, takes Dexter's son, and carries him to the roof of a solar-powered skyscraper to sacrifice him during a solar eclipse. Dexter gets there just in time, talks Travis into releasing Harrison by offering himself instead, fakes the injection, and takes Travis down. That night, Dexter has Travis on his table in the abandoned church. Travis argues he was chosen by God. Dexter tells him he was just using God as an excuse to kill innocent people. Then Dexter says something he's never said before, that maybe his darkness serves a purpose, that light can't exist without it. He drives the knife in, and Debra walks through the church doors. She's there because her therapist pushed her to confront her feelings. Feelings that, in one of the show's most controversial storylines, have been building toward a realization that her attachment to Dexter runs deeper than sisterly love. She came to the church to tell Dexter how she feels. Instead, she sees him standing over a body with a knife in his hand. Dexter turns, sees his sister, blood on his hands, knife still warm, Travis Marshall on the table behind him. And the look on Debra's face isn't fear, it isn't anger. It's the look of someone whose entire reality just collapsed. Every weird absence, every canceled dinner, every time Dexter said he was fine and something in his eyes said otherwise, all of it makes sense now. And the sense it makes is the worst possible kind. Dexter says 2 words, "Oh God." 6 seasons of secrets. 6 seasons of lying to the one person who has been there for every single moment. And it ends with Dexter Morgan standing in a church, watching her brother kill a man. And one more thing. As the crime scene techs process the church, LaGuerta notices something glinting under a floor grate. She reaches down and picks up a blood slide, Dexter's blood slide, the one he dropped during the kill. She holds it up to the light and doesn't say a word. That's not a cliffhanger. That's a detonation.
If Season 6 ended with a detonation, Season 7 is the fallout. It starts exactly where Season 6 ended. Debra is standing in the church, Dexter is standing over a body, and there is no lie big enough to cover this. He tries anyway. He tells Deb he snapped, that he found Travis at the church, and all the anger he'd been carrying since Rita's death just boiled over. Deb wants to believe him. She really does. But then she gets home and looks at the scene in her mind. The plastic wrap, the ritual, the precision. She's seen this before. The ice truck killer wrapped her the exact same way. She pulls Dexter's apartment apart, finds his kit, finds the blood slides, sits him down and asks if he killed all those people. Dexter says, "I did." She asks if he's a serial killer. He says yes. And Dexter Morgan, the woman who has spent her entire career hunting killers, vomits in the street. What follows is the most psychologically brutal stretch of the entire series. Deb doesn't arrest Dexter. She can't. Instead, she moves him into her place and tries to rehabilitate him. Serial killer rehab. She sleeps by the front door. He sleeps in her bed. She makes him promise to be honest. He tells her about the code, about Harry, about the dark passenger that's been riding shotgun since he was 3 years old. It's insane, and it doesn't work, because you can't therapy away a compulsion that was engineered into someone before they could ride a bicycle. Dexter sits through sessions with Deb's therapist, nods at the right moments, and walks out feeling exactly the same. The dark passenger isn't a metaphor. It's a roommate that pays no rent and never leaves. Dexter's urges are building. He snaps at work, grabs a suspect by the throat, and tells Deb that if she doesn't let him channel his need the way Harry taught him, something bad is going to happen. She reluctantly agrees to back off, just a little. And Dexter immediately zeroes in on Ray Speltzer, a parolee who murdered 2 women and walked on a technicality. Deb insists they do it by the book, get a warrant, follow the law. While they're waiting for paperwork, Speltzer kills again. A bartender named Melanie Garrett. Deb tried to stop it, broke into his house, confronted him, but Speltzer knocked her down and would have killed her too if Dexter hadn't shown up with a plank. That moment changes everything, because Deb realizes that if she'd let Dexter handle Speltzer his way, Melanie would still be alive. She doesn't condone what Dexter does, but she admits it might be a necessary evil. Dexter eventually catches Speltzer, straps him to a table in a crematorium, and burns him alive along with his entire blood slide collection. No more trophies, no more evidence. When Deb shows up and asks if he did it for her, Dexter says no. She stares at the smoke rising from the chimney and says she's glad, then asks, "What does that make me?" Dexter's answer, human. Meanwhile, Quinn's spiral continues. He's drinking more, working less, still hung up on Debra, who won't return his calls now that she's consumed by the Dexter situation. Quinn is becoming the kind of cop who cuts corners because he stopped caring about the edges. And then a new threat emerges. Isaac Serko is the head of the Koshka Brotherhood, a Ukrainian crime syndicate that runs nightclubs and product through Miami. Dexter killed one of Isaac's men, Viktor Baskov, because Viktor murdered Detective Mike Anderson. Dexter tracked Viktor down using the one place killers always forget to wipe, the turn signal. A single fingerprint. That's all it took. Now Isaac wants revenge. Not because Viktor was a valuable soldier, because Viktor was the love of his life. This is where Season 7 gets genuinely interesting. Isaac Serko is not a typical villain. He's sophisticated, terrifyingly calm, and driven by grief. He walks into a Colombian bar full of men who want him dead and kills every single one of them. When Dexter visits him in jail and asks if it's over, Isaac tells him a story about his grandfather waiting decades to avenge a family member with a 6-inch knife. "So you ask me if this is over," Isaac says. "No, I'm afraid not." Dexter eventually discovers that Viktor was Isaac's lover, not a work associate, not a protege, the person he loved. 2 killers sitting across from each other, both hiding who they really are from the world, both driven by love they can never fully explain. Under different circumstances, Isaac says, they could have been friends, and the tragedy is that he might be right. Meanwhile, Quinn gets pulled into the Brotherhood's orbit. George Novikov, Isaac's lieutenant, forces Quinn to lose the blood evidence linking Isaac to the Colombian bar massacre. The leverage is simple. Quinn's girlfriend Nadia works at the Brotherhood's club. If Quinn doesn't cooperate, Nadia gets shipped to a trafficking operation in Dubai. Quinn caves, and his soul gets a little smaller. And then there's Hannah McKay. If Lila was chaos without a code, and Lumen was a civilian with a temporary darkness, Hannah is the thing Dexter never expected to find. A mirror. She went on a 3-state killing spree with her boyfriend Wayne Randall when she was 15. They robbed gas stations. They left bodies in ditches. Wayne got life in prison. Hannah got immunity because she was a minor and testified against him, but she never stopped. Her husband died of a heart attack that wasn't a heart attack. Her elderly landlord died of complications that weren't complications. A counselor who assaulted her at a halfway house died of what looked like food poisoning but was actually aconite. Hannah McKay kills people the way other people take aspirin, quietly, efficiently, without losing a minute of sleep. A true crime
crime writer named Sal Price starts investigating her, analyzing wound patterns and soil samples, building a case that Wayne Randall's kills were actually done by someone much smaller, someone like Hannah. Dexter is supposed to kill her. He sets up the table, the plastic, the whole ritual. He even has her strapped down. She looks up at him and says, "Do what you gotta do." He cuts her free and sleeps with her instead, right there, on the plastic, with the knife still warm. Hannah McKay is not like anyone Dexter has been with before. Rita was a cover story. Lila was an obsession. Lumen was a mission. Hannah is something Dexter doesn't have a category for. She's his equal, his match. A woman who kills as naturally as she breathes and who looks at Dexter not with horror or pity or fascination, but recognition. This is the first time Dexter has ever been with someone who fully knows what he is and doesn't flinch. Hannah doesn't need the code explained to her. She doesn't need to process or rationalize. When Dexter mentions his dark passenger, she laughs it off. "You're not a puppet. Of course you have a choice." And that line rewires something in Dexter's brain. Because if there's no dark passenger, if it's just him, then he's responsible for everything he's ever done. The Hannah relationship puts Dexter on a collision course with Debra. Because Deb knows Hannah is a killer. She has Sal Price's investigation. She has a witness named Arlene Schramm, and she's building a case. When Deb pushes too hard, Hannah poisons her water bottle with dissolved anti-anxiety pills, and Deb crashes her car. That's when Dexter makes his choice. He gives Deb Sal Price's pen, the one Hannah poisoned him with, the one Dexter pulled from evidence and hid, Hannah's prints, aconite traces, enough to make an arrest. When the police show up at Hannah's house, she looks at Dexter and says 5 words: "You should have killed me." But LaGuerta is the real ticking bomb this season. She found Dexter's blood slide at the church in the season 6 finale, and she's been quietly building a case ever since. She connects Dexter to a marina. She discovers that the cabin where Doakes died was rented by one of the men who killed Dexter's mother. She learns that Brian Moser, the ice truck killer, was Dexter's biological brother, and that both boys watched their mother get cut apart, just like the Bay Harbor butcher cut apart his victims. She even pulls gas station security footage showing Debra filling a gas can 2 blocks from the church the night Travis died. The net is closing from every direction. LaGuerta is relentless. She's the only person in the entire series besides Doakes who refuses to accept the comfortable lie. Everyone else in the building looks at Dexter and sees the nice lab guy. LaGuerta looks at the evidence and sees a pattern. She even arrests Dexter, walks him through the station in handcuffs in front of everyone. But Dexter is too good. He plants evidence to make it look like LaGuerta framed him, and the charges collapse. LaGuerta knows it. Dexter knows she knows it. And now there's only one way this ends. On New Year's Eve, Dexter lures Hector Estrada, the last surviving killer of his mother, to a shipping container and uses him as bait to draw LaGuerta in alone. When she arrives and finds Estrada dead, Dexter steps out of the shadows and sedates her. Debra shows up. She's figured out the plan. She begs Dexter not to do it. LaGuerta wakes up, sees Deb, says, "Shoot him. You're a good person." Dexter agrees. She is a good person. He drops the knife. "Do what you gotta do." Debra shoots LaGuerta, not Dexter. LaGuerta. She runs to her captain's side, holding the woman she just killed to protect the brother she can't stop loving. Outside, fireworks light up the sky over Miami. People are kissing. People are celebrating. And Debra Morgan is on the floor of a shipping container, covered in the blood of the woman she just killed, while her brother stands over her like a shadow she'll never escape. Dexter watches the fireworks turn blood red and thinks, is this a new beginning or the beginning of the end? The final season opens with a time jump that feels like whiplash. 6 months after LaGuerta's death, Dexter is doing great. Coached Harrison's soccer team to a championship, got the bowling team back together, made some new friends. Life is good. Debra, on the other hand, has fallen apart. She quit the police force. She's working as a private investigator, partying with lowlifes, sleeping with a criminal, and refusing to return Dexter's calls. When he tracks her down at a motel in Fort Lauderdale, she tells him she hates him, that she shot the wrong person in the shipping container, that she should have killed him instead of LaGuerta, and she means it. On the drive back from the motel, when Dexter mentions that Harry took his own life out of guilt, Debra jerks the steering wheel and drives them both into a lake. She sits in the sinking car watching the water rise and doesn't move. Then something cracks, and she dives back in to pull Dexter out. She wants him dead. She can't let him die. That's where Debra Morgan lives now. And then a woman named Dr. Evelyn Vogel walks into Miami Metro and looks at Dexter like she already knows everything, because she does. Vogel is a neuropsychiatrist who specializes in psychopaths. She wrote the book on them, literally. She also helped Harry Morgan create the code. It was her idea, the whole framework. Only kill bad people. Don't get caught. Channel the urge instead of suppressing it. That was Evelyn Vogel's blueprint, built when Dexter was 10 years old and already collecting bloody trophies from crime scenes. Vogel is the architect, the woman behind the man behind the knife. She convinced Harry that Dexter's urges couldn't be suppressed, only channeled. She sat in that office with a grieving father and a damaged child and designed a system for turning a potential spree killer into a targeted weapon. Everything Dexter has done for 20 years traces back to her notepad. She's come back to Miami because someone is killing people and scooping out specific parts of their brains. The anterior insular cortex, the part that processes empathy. Someone has been leaving these brain samples on Vogel's doorstep like twisted little gifts. The department calls the killer the brain surgeon, and Vogel needs Dexter to find him. At first, Dexter wants nothing to do with her, but Vogel has something he can't walk away from. Old recordings of Harry, videos of his father sitting in Vogel's office, breaking down about his son's condition, wondering if he'd made the right choice. Dexter has never seen his father this vulnerable. These tapes are the closest thing to a conversation with Harry he'll ever get, so he agrees to help. And he lets Vogel start treating Debra, who is spiraling so hard, she drunkenly confesses to killing LaGuardia in the middle of the police station. Dexter has to sedate her with M99 and carry her out over his shoulder. The brain surgeon investigation leads to a man named A.J. Yates, a former patient of Vogel's who collects women's shoes and breaks their toes one by one. He kidnaps Vogel. Dexter and Debra track them to a vacant house, and Dexter kills Yates by impaling him with a curtain rod through the bed he's hiding under. And something shifts. On Dexter's boat that night, with Yates' body wrapped and ready to drop, Debra and Vogel are both there. Vogel says it's beautiful on the water. Deb quips, well, the family that kills together. And when they ask Dexter why he brought them along, he says, I wanted to be with family.
Then, Dexter takes on a student, Zach Hamilton, a rich teenager who murdered a woman named Norma Rivera and photographed the whole thing, frame by frame. The blood pooling, the body settling. Dexter is supposed to kill him. Instead, he sees a kid who has the urge but not the training. Someone who never had a Harry. So Dexter starts teaching Zach the code. Rule 1, Rule 2, the whole curriculum. It's Harry Morgan all over again, except this time Dexter is the father figure, and history is repeating in the most disturbing way possible. But there's a bigger problem coming. Vogel had 2 sons. The younger one, Richard Jr., was drowned by the older one, Daniel, when they were children. Vogel and her husband covered it up as an accident and sent Daniel to a psychiatric facility in England. At 17, Daniel supposedly died in a fire at the institution. He didn't die, he faked his death. Daniel Vogel has been living under a string of aliases ever since, killing his way across 2 continents without ever being caught. He's now in Miami, going by the name Oliver Saxon, and he's been dating Cassie, the woman who lives next door to Dexter. When she tried to break things off, he beat her to death. He also killed Zach Hamilton, leaving behind the song Make Your Own Kind of Music playing at the scene. The same song Vogel used to play on Saturdays when she took young Daniel to Kings Bay Cafe. A message to his mother, I remember everything. Dexter figures out that Saxon is the real brain surgeon. Vogel knows it too, but she can't bring herself to let Dexter kill her son. She wants to help Daniel. She thinks she can reach him. Dexter tells her she's wrong, but she won't listen. Saxon proves Dexter right in the worst way possible. He shows up at Vogel's house. They sit at her kitchen table. She tries to reach him, tries to be his mother again. And while Dexter watches on a video call, unable to get there in time, Saxon picks up a knife and slits Vogel's throat. The camera stays on her face. Saxon holds her as she bleeds out, something we can't hear. By the time Dexter arrives, she's dead in her chair. The woman who created the code dies in front of the man she created it for. And Dexter can do nothing but cradle her body and scream. And then Hannah McKay comes back. She escapes from custody, returns to Miami, and drugs Dexter and Debra at Deb's beach house just to prove she can. But she's not there for revenge. She's there because she still loves Dexter, and Dexter still loves her. Within days, they're planning a new life together. Argentina, him, Hannah, and Harrison. A clean break from everything. Dexter starts wrapping up his life, gives notice at Miami Metro, puts his apartment up for sale, even his boat. He's ready to walk away from all of it. The kill room, the code, the darkness, everything Harry built, everything Vogel designed, everything that's defined Dexter Morgan since he was 3 years old sitting in blood. He tells Hannah, I'm more than that. And for the first time in 8 seasons, he actually believes it. Saxon visits the police station voluntarily, trying to clear his name for Cassie's murder. He sits across from Dexter in an interview room, cool as ice, and lets Dexter swab his cheek for DNA. He's so confident he'll get away with it that he walks into the lion's den and orders a coffee. Dexter publishes Saxon's kill videos to the news to flush him out. Then Dexter does something he's never done. He decides not to kill Saxon himself. He captures him, straps him to his own kill table, and realizes he'd rather be with Hannah than watch this man die. This is usually my favorite moment, he says, but now I don't even want to be here. He calls Debra to come arrest Saxon instead, but a U.S. Marshal named Clayton followed Debra to the hospital where Saxon is being held. Clayton finds Saxon strapped down and frees him. Saxon immediately stabs Clayton and shoots Debra in the gut when she walks in. The bullet doesn't kill her. Surgery goes well. The doctors are optimistic. Debra wakes up briefly and smiles at Dexter. For one moment, it feels like they might actually make it. All of them. Argentina, a new start. The Morgans, finally free. Dexter tells Hannah to take Harrison and go ahead to Argentina. He'll catch up. He just needs to make sure Deb is okay first. He just needs one more day. Then a blood clot forms, triggers a massive stroke. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, Debra's brain has been deprived of oxygen for too long. She's on life support. She will never wake up. Quinn is destroyed. He sits in the hospital hallway with his head in his hands and doesn't move for hours. Dexter is destroyed in a different way. He doesn't cry. He doesn't scream. He goes very still, the way he does when something fundamental breaks inside his operating system. And this is the moment where everything the show has been building toward finally lands. Because Dexter Morgan doesn't believe in miracles. He's never seen one, and he knows. The way only someone who has spent his entire life surrounded by death can know. That the machine breathing for his sister is not keeping her alive. It's keeping her body alive. Debra is already gone. In a flashback, baby Harrison is in the hospital nursery, and Debra tells Dexter he'll be a great father because he always took care of her. When she was scared of monsters in the dark, he told her they were just shadows, but the monsters were never shadows, and Dexter knows it. Every person who has ever gotten close to him has been destroyed by him. Rita, Doakes, LaGuerta, Vogel, and now Debra. The one person who was always there, who always chose him, who killed for him, who gave up her career and her conscience and her sanity for him.
Dexter turns off the life support, leans close. I love you, Deb.
He wraps her body in a sheet, carries her past the nurses and patients being evacuated for the hurricane, and puts her on his boat. He drops her into the ocean, the same ocean where he's dropped dozens of killers, monsters, and predators. The same water that swallowed Freebo and Lila and Arthur Mitchell and Jordan Chase. Now it takes the one person who deserved it least, and Dexter watches his sister sink beneath the waves. He calls Hannah and Harrison one last time. Harrison asks when Daddy is coming. Dexter says soon. He says he loves him. He hangs up, then throws the phone into the water and points the slice of life at the darkest part of the horizon. The engine screams. The waves get bigger, and Dexter Morgan drives straight into the hurricane. The Coast Guard finds the wreckage. No survivors. Angel Batista is notified. As far as anyone knows, Dexter Morgan died in the storm. In Argentina, Hannah sits at a sidewalk cafe with Harrison. The sun is warm. The street is quiet. She reads the news on a tablet. Her face changes. She wipes away a tear. Harrison asks what's wrong. She smiles, folds the tablet, and asks the boy if he wants ice cream. The screen cuts to black, and you think it's over. But in the final scene, a logging truck pulls into a lumber yard somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. The driver unties the logs, walks to a small rented room, sits down at a wooden table, and stares forward. Behind the beard and the flannel is the face of Dexter Morgan. He's alive. He's alone. No Harrison, no Hannah, no Debra, no boat, no slides, no plastic wrap, no Miami sun, no donuts, no lab coat. Everything that made Dexter Morgan who he was is gone, stripped away by choice, because he finally realized that everything he loved, he destroyed. And those eyes staring into the camera aren't the eyes of a man who found peace. They're the eyes of a man who chose exile, who stripped away everything, his son, his lover, his name, his purpose. Because he finally understood what he'd been doing to the people around him his entire life. 8 seasons, 96 episodes, one code, one boat. One man who started as a monster wearing a human mask and ended as a human who finally understood the cost of the monster he'd been carrying. The show didn't end with a bang or a chase or a courtroom verdict. It ended with a man sitting in a room, staring at nothing, paying a price that no prison could match. Total isolation, by choice, forever. And the man who spent a decade pretending to be human ended the show more human than he'd ever been, and more alone than he'd ever imagined. Dexter Morgan didn't survive because he was the smartest, or the strongest, or the most careful. He survived because nobody wanted to believe the truth about the quiet guy in the lab with the nice smile and the boat. He survived because the people who loved him, Rita, Debra, even Harry, made excuses for the things that didn't add up. The late nights, the missing hours, the blood under his fingernails that he always explained away. They didn't want to see it, so they didn't. And by the time anyone did believe it, Doakes, LaGuerta, Debra, it was too late, for them and for him. That's the story of Dexter Morgan, a show that started with a killer who couldn't feel and ended with a man who felt too much. A show that asked whether a monster could love
and answered yes, but the love doesn't save you. It just makes the bill more expensive when it finally comes due. Thanks for watching. If you made it through all 8 seasons with me, you're either a dedicated fan or you have serious commitment issues. Either way, I respect it. Feel free to click on the video on your screen for more deep dives, and I'll see you in the next one.